we only got our own studio when the band broke. We had the money. Up until then, we just used to work with those funny Lindrum things, and
we used to just hire tiny little studios or find studios that were going out of business. You do a cash deal and all that sort of stuff.
The Sexy was recorded in a what they call it, in a dark studio, a studio that's gone bankrupt.
Yeah. Oh, really?
We just used to creep in there at night.
The demo.
Oh, wow.
The demo.
It's a demo, and the only light in there was off the desk.
Yeah.
Wait, what year was that? Was it 89?
No, that was about 1990.
Yes, that was 90. The first sessions for Sexy was August or September 1990.
And it was freezing, snowy, I remember.
Was that recording to tape still, or was it still?
No, that wasn't. No, two things. The first demo was done with Atari.
Right.
Very first. And then when we actually did the record, we took bits of the demo with us, and the rest of it was done on 2-inch.
Right.
That was recorded at Red Bus Studios in London.
Yeah.
So some of this track is actually from the demo. I think most of the vocal is the demo vocal.
I didn't know anything when we did Sexy, and the girl that was managing us at the time, we'd had some remixes done.
Right.
And it came out that the remix was like 10 minutes long, and I just remember thinking, how do you do that? How do you stretch a 3-minute song? I couldn't understand how you did that. And obviously I understand it now. But back in the day, a lot of it was a complete mystery to me. I really didn't, because we'd spent most of our time on the circuit, just doing pubs.
Doing shows,
doing little shows. And so the technical side of it and production, all that stuff was really foreign.
But everything that
it still is a bit for me.
It is. And it is for us in a way that,
we were very much plug in and play.
We were,
for years.
Yeah.
And then I started going to clubs because I really like house music. So I started going to clubs at early 80s. And then we wanted to... we came out of a really bad record deal in the States with Capital EMI. And so we came back to London and we thought, well, what are we going to do? So that's when we started playing around. Well, we were looking for people who could work little programs like Atari stuff. So that's how that started.
Wow.
And we liked the simplicity of it. We were sick of bands when we couldn't, as you say,
getting players and agreeing.
Herding cats, man. Even now.
Well, as you said, the Lindrum's probably a lot more agreeable than...
Well, it was at the time.
Yeah.
I can remember the first time we sat in the studio with a sampler. I think it was made by Bell. And it suddenly did a 5-second sampler or 3. I can't remember what it was. It wasn't the famous sampler, the S5000, what it was called. I can't remember now. It was this Bell thing. And I remember us doing something into it, and then you push this button, it just repeated it, and the whole studio was like, "Whoa!" Because it was extraordinary to imagine you could do that. Because everything before had been 1, 2, 3, and you play.
So from that moment on, we made sure that every chorus was no more than 5 seconds long. So you could push it.
Yeah, I can remember that really well.
Yeah. But it's that shift from doing it as a kind of fun thing and then entering into the business is a really weird psychological thing that happens to you. It's very odd.
I have heard that because a few of my friends are in touring bands, and I'm not going to name them because I don't want to. They want to stay apolitical.
Right.
Yes.
But they've told me that we used to jam together all the time. We went to the same school.
Right.
And we would just pull out a guitar when we were all hanging out, and it would just be an impromptu thing, and it would be fun.
Yeah.
That was, to my mind, what music was all about. Yeah. I'm kind of glad I made the decision to keep it as just something that is a release, because when I come home from work, the first thing I'll do is pick up my guitar. And it will still be fun. It won't feel like a chore a lot of the time. I'll still be creating stuff. I won't necessarily just be rote learning or rehearsing.
Sometimes it is a chore.
It does become a
really
job.
can be.
It can be like work. Yeah. It can be. The only time that never feels so is when you do a live show. Then it's never work. It's always just fun.
I think you can hear it with bands as well on the recordings. Their early stuff, where the breakthrough stuff is really fresh and energetic. As it become more commercialized, not all of them go commercialized in that positive sense.
No.
But the more they progress in their career, the more sort of strict it gets, and it loses its life a little bit.
It can do. I think it's difficult to do, but you have to hang on to the childlike aspect of it. And not get too. I was listening to there's an Elvis Presley thing. I listened to Hound Dog the other day, and it's a remix, and it's just so free. It's just so free. Really, really simple, and an absolutely brilliant vocal. And music then, it was kind of people. It was almost like people discovering it as they went along, rock music and pop music and all that. And now it's become so homogenized, and so we found out a few years ago that there was in Northern Europe, in Belgium and where it was, studios were tending to put all the vocals through the same machine.
Yeah.
So all the vocals sort of sounded the same.
Yeah. It's already formulaic.
Yeah, it became incredibly formulaic.
We were doing a project with a label in America. I won't say who. Quite famous for an act with a famous manager, manages some big acts.
Yeah.
And we'd done this track, and they were interested. And they wanted us to supply some of the vocals, so originally some vocal. We sent it over. They said, "What compressor are you using?" And at the time, we had an ancient Demeter or Demeter, however I pronounce it, which was really sought after. We just happened to have one. And they said, "Oh, no, you can't do that because everyone's using whatever it was, this plugin." And I was just like, if this is where we've got, shove your project up your ass. I'm not interested. You start having those conversations.
It just becomes really safe.
Yeah, and it's also with people in the industry, they like buzzwords. I remember back in the day, it was things like double tracking and what's the reverb or whatever, And we actually did a session with some guy in Germany. We were involved in a session in Hamburg, and we're sitting around, and then there's this young kid who's doing the programming, and I was playing a bit of guitar, and I said, "Yeah, I think could you add some? I want some compression while I'm playing." He said, "Well, no one uses compression anymore."
Yeah, because they do it in post-production.
Yeah.
Nobody told me that. I did.
Yeah, so I said, "No, mate, I want it while I play.
Yeah.
And that's how I want to play this."
Yeah.
"Oh, we don't do that." "No, you don't do that. I do that."
But the thing is, as well, compression is a really useful tool.
It is, of course it is.
Yeah.
And I use it all the time, particularly if I've got something where there's a certain picking pattern where you're kind of striking the strings and you want a rhythmic quality to it.
Yeah.
The compression sort of accentuates that and makes it clearer in the mix as well.
Yeah.
And you can actually hear that almost percussive element on the guitar.
It's when things on the production and engineering side become quite academic, technical. They start saying, "No, you can't do this."
Yes.
That's this person's job, and you can't, it strips the creativity out there.
It does. Yeah, we've had that.
Yeah. Remember that song? There's Elton John. I can't stand Elton John, but there's a song.
We were talking about that yesterday.
Yeah. Oh, terrible. I thought he was great, but during the COVID thing, he just became a complete twat. But there's one particular song, I can't remember what it was. And anyway, the producer said, recommended a mic for him to use. And it's a live mic, or a mic that you would normally use live. And the vocal is slightly distorted on it. And the story is, I wasn't there, but the story is Elton John complained about that and said, the guy said, "No, that's how you sound. That's how you sound. And it sounds great. And so leave it." So there is this thing. It's a bit like we used to work with a guy. And the minute the needle on the meter went to red, he panicked and, "Oh my God," and it became a very, very mathematical kind of thing. What was that story about the Kinks who's cut the?
Dave Davis. Cut the speaker.
That's to get distortion.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Rock and roll.
Big fan of the Kinks.
Yes, and you would know.
Great band.
Ray Davis. Brilliant. Absolutely. But that wouldn't happen now. You'd have an app on the computer.
Yeah, you have a plugin, wouldn't you?
You'd have a plugin for split thing, and you press the button.
I'm a massive fan of basically taking an all analog approach.
Okay.
I'd love to have sort of a tape recorder, but I've got digital recording where I've just got an interface and I plug straight into a microphone just because it's so easy.
Yeah.
But lots and lots of effects pedals, and I do it all that way.
Right.
Because it just feels more musical to be turning all the dials and actually see it in front of you represented. You can kind of look at it on the ground and see what your sound is.
Pedal board, yeah.
Well, that's the weird with computer when you're in the studio and they press like a kind of a vocal app or whatever thing, plug in, and it comes up on the screen. It's a picture of the amp.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? What is
It's the main issue I have with my setup, because it's not a setup, it's a laptop with a ton of waves plugins. But and it's good, and you can make good sounds of it, but I recorded it before at J&J Studios in Bristol, which is owned by, I think, Robert Dalnaja.
Okay.
Right.
And he had all the kit there, and that was, it's a lot more intuitive.
Yeah.
It can be a bit of a pain in the arse to get in the flow state with it.
Yes.
But then I find that a lot easier to get into the flow with the laptop because it's all there. But there's a happy medium, I think.
Yes, it is. Yeah, I think we use guitars a lot, and I really enjoy. Like yesterday, I had a session, and I was using a '64 Bassman Head as and going into I think it was a Lazy J 1x12, I think. And it just sounded great, and it's fun, and I like doing, but I also like lots of plugins. I really like working with synths and loops, and I quite like that mishmash, that analog and digital crossover.
Yeah, definitely.
I really like that, and we do work with remote sessions occasionally, like with backing singers and drummers. But 9 times out of 10, I prefer having people in the studio.
It's not much fun
because you say, "Oh, I've got an idea." You can, even if you've got them on video while they do the vocal. There's a human interaction missing.
Bounce off each other.
I think that's the most exciting thing about creating music. Is that period of time when you're bouncing ideas off of one another and you're getting the sort of skeleton of a song together. And then it can get quite tedious sometimes when you're actually trying to perfect how it comes together.
Exactly.
And if you're lucky enough to play with really good players, and a few times we have, it's just really inspiring to be in the room with them. You're playing and think, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Really good.
Really good. Yeah, exactly.
I'm fortunate enough to like a genre of music where being out of time and being sort of out of key is actually desirable.
Well, that's all right.
Like jazz.
Yeah.
In a sense, talk about psychedelic rock.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that also has its own thing as well, isn't it? And you don't need to be a good player, but you need to be an intuitive player.
That's what I've tried to foster. I've not even really learnt that much music theory. It's just been training my ear a lot of the time.
Yeah.
I did do piano lessons when I was a kid, so there's a certain element of having the grounding already. Other than that, I've never had a guitar lesson in my life.
Oh, okay. Right.
I'm just
so do you like some of the new psychedelic rock, like Ty Segall?
I've been listening to him today. Yeah, he's great. Yeah.
It's interesting. I don't get political, but
go on.
We were doing a writing session with him.
Oh, really?
Remotely in 2019, and then 2020, I think it was, with another guy. And suddenly we got dumped from the session because we were anti-mask.
Really?
Yeah. But they were in LA.
And did they want you wearing masks on the?
Well, I don't know.
On the Zoom.
I don't know. They were in LA. They would send us some chord progressions. We'd write some melodies, top lines, lyrics, send them back. We pinged it like this. It was fine. And we had actually come up with a track that was getting a very good response from some labels and stuff. And then we suddenly got this email. Said,
your position on masks.
Your position on masks is untenable, and we no longer want to work.
I imagine that's some producer or someone behind the scenes.
Well, the email came from the other writer, and Ty was copied. And I just thought, wow.
Well, it's a bit like a lot of these rock bands who are all very sort of, fuck the man and all this kind of stuff, and then bought into the whole bullshit immediately.
Yeah.
Gene Simmons, what a twat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, I sort of think that's expected. Very corporate band. But their image, Rage Against the Machine was the one.
Oh, that was hilarious.
The title. Rage Against, and the machine came calling, and they just went, all right.
And they buckled. Yeah, exactly.
Extraordinary. Yeah.
I was a little bit upset at Paul McCartney saying something at Glastonbury because he's one of my musical heroes.
Yes.
Beatles are easily one of my favourite bands of all time.
Yeah, wonderful band.
And I was just like, you didn't have to say anything.
No.
You mocked John Lennon for getting into politics. And
then waves the Ukrainian flag.
It's just like, why did you do that?
What I think is John Lennon was probably one of the nicest people you could meet, one of the most patient people you could meet, because he put up with that twat for all those years.
He was meant to be bossy in the studio, supposedly.
So McCartney.
Yeah,
maybe. But sometimes having a boss is a good thing.
Yeah,
because people, certainly bands, will just, like we said, like the herd of cats. They just sort of like dissipate. And I think that's why when we're on the road, we always, if we've got a full band setup, we always have an MD to keep everybody in check.
Yeah,
and then we're taken out of the out the loop because then we're not, it doesn't become personal,
right? Yeah.
And the MD can get a bit arsy if he has to, and tell whoever if they're on it, or talk them up if they're doing a good show. But I think sometimes that's why a good producer can be worth its weight in gold, because you do need someone in a session, I think, who's got a handle on what you're trying to achieve. Somebody, without. And so maybe he was right. Maybe he felt he had to. I mean, I don't know. I wasn't there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's difficult. We did a session in it was 92 or no 93 it was, and we're in the studio and there's a knock on the door and Paul and Linda walked in, And we're like, oh, hi. And he said, can we sit in on the session? So we go, yeah, all right. So him and Linda just sat in on the session. It was extraordinary.
I missed it all because I went home for lunch.
He went home for lunch. so
I'd be gutted.
Yeah, so Linda got up and made tea. And I have to say, she was really endearing.
Yeah.
She was a sweetheart, man. Yeah, lovely.
Yeah.
I've gone right off him recently, but at
the time, he was fine.
We were talking about the violin bass. He said, I've got that violin bass because they were rehearsing next door. So he went and got his bass. He's got this sellotape to the top of the thing with I Feel Fine.
Babies in Black, wasn't it?
And we
actually have one of those, a Hofner violin bass.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's got a 63 in it.
Yeah. I never play it.
No, don't play it much.
No.
You sort of become more of a...
Well, somebody was talking the other day about a P bass.
Yeah, precision.
I realise that now.
The Fender one.
I was talking about,
yeah.
Fender. Yeah. What the fuck is a P bass? I don't know what that is. Looked it up. Precision. I've got one of those.
Yeah, no, well, yours is a hybrid, isn't it?
Mine's a hybrid. Because I really like the jazz neck.
Jazz bass, yeah.
Yeah, the jazz bass, because I can't be doing with that precision, the original neck. So, this new one is a hybrid. So it's got a jazz neck. It's not a jazz. It's a precision body, but it's got a jazz neck.
Right.
I don't know what the electric's precision. I think they are. I think that's all it is. I think the whole body's precision.
Yeah, I think
the next jazz.
Yeah,
it's a lovely. It's a really nice sounding.
I was reading about James Jamerson the other day, and he was known as the Hook.
Was he?
Yeah, because he played with one finger.
I've seen
he's a double bass. He started off as a piano player.
Well, he did this whole time.
Oh yeah.
I've seen
man.
I can't remember the name of the band, but I saw a band play, and a guy had lost his hand.
Oh,
and he had a hook for a hand, and he was playing bass, and he was still better than me. It was really rubbing it.
Yeah, rubbing it in.
Yeah, all right, mate.
Yeah. Yeah, apparently he played because he started off on piano, and then James Jamerson moved to double bass. Right. And double bass players always just use one finger.
Oh, yeah, of course.
No, they don't.
I thought they used both.
I thought they did.
It's the positioning, isn't it? Because it's much easier to use.
Yes.
It's almost like a Travis picking style.
Yes.
Most of the time it's that.
Is it?
It's just that.
Right, okay.
Wow. Do you ever use thumb or anything?
I don't know. No,
I don't know.
Do you not do it on the bass strings on a double bass? It would almost be that sort of thing.
No, I thought
you've got the lowest strings for your
at least
thumb.
for the highest string anyway. You use thumb.
Well, it's weird because he only ever used flat wound strings.
Right.
On the bass, it was a really high action, so it's quite tough to play back.
Right.
And on a precision neck, so it would have been quite wide.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of things where they isolate his take on a couple of songs, and it's not particularly clean. It's not. It's a little bit, I mean, it's brilliant, but it's not clean particularly. But they say he was one of the most influential. I saw an interview with Paul McCartney. Yeah, he was one of the most influential bass players for. Do me a favour.
We worked with we had a bass player called Phil Spaulding.
Yeah,
right.
Who was talking about playing clean, and Phil didn't play clean.
No,
and part of his attraction
was good.
Part of his attraction was that because you could hear the frets.
Yeah.
He purposely pulled strings out of tune, so you could hear it sticking through the mix. And in I'm Just Sexy, there's this bass flip. It's like a bum 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 bum. It's a very cool thing. Everyone thinks he played it on a 5-string. He didn't. He played it on a 4-string. He just detuned it.
Isn't he sort of bent it out of tune or pulled it?
He would have pulled it. I don't know. I think that
he lowered the E string to a B.
He went to a C sharp or B.
B, I think.
I think he went to C sharp. I can't remember. It's a long time ago. But what's interesting is when we go on the road, if we're taking a bass player, and we say the first thing is, can you do the flip?
If they can do that,
if they can't, and the amount of players who can't do it, they'll wax lyrically how fabulous they are, and then you say, well, can you actually play the bass line? Don't Touch Us Kiss, because actually it's a pretty good frigging bass line.
Yeah,
and we've had people down to play it, and you have to go quite high up the food chain to find bass players that can play what Phil used to play.
We worked with a guy in Germany who thought he was a bass player, who thought he was a big star. Had all the poses and the thing and all going on. When it came to that, it was.
He just. It was. And we were playing. I looked around and they really made. What was that?
What the fuck was that?
But he flunged it.
Yeah. What was it? It was a band we were given for a show in Germany, so pickup band.
Right.
And what I think what a lot of it is a lot of the newer players, somewhat they go to schools like BIM, this sort of thing.
Yeah.
And we've worked with some. They come out very knowledgeable and very skillful. What a lot of them don't have is flair and intuition.
Yeah.
They don't. And what Phil Spalding, and other players we've used, the guys like Diego Rodriguez and Trevor Barry, these sort of players, they incorporate flair and intuition into their skills, which is why they're so popular players, such popular players. But what you find with some of the BIM people come out is I was taught it like this. Yeah, we don't want it like that.
Yeah.
We want like, are they looking like, what do I do?
Yeah.
You know, so there's quite a difference in the style of playing. And I think that probably happens with audio engineering and programming. And one of the programs we work with is this young guy, and he thinks very fresh. He's Nate's late 20s, 30?
Yes.
Late 20s?
Yes.
And he for a young guy, he's got a very fresh head on him.
Yeah.
Not at all corporate.
Yeah.
Whereas you do sit with some guys and they're like, well, this is my sound, this is how I play.
Yeah.
Really? Okay.
One thing John Lennon said was he said it's quite good not to have too much theory if you're a songwriter.
Yeah,
I very much subscribe to that.
And I believe that.
I heard from Hendrix very early on that I think it was in one of his interviews in America where he said he didn't know any music theory whatsoever. So I thought, well, if it's good enough for Hendrix, it's good enough for me.
Yeah, well, Sinatra couldn't read music, for instance.
Loads of people.
But
I think that it's got its uses, music theory, but also I like that it's intuitive now. That I've fostered that in myself. I still know if someone says, "Oh, it's in the key of A," I'll know which fret to go to. But I don't go to that if I'm trying to create something.
No.
I mean, when theory comes in really useful is when we've had brass arrangers.
Yes.
Or you've got an MD who's a keyboard player, normally properly trained, and they can speak that language if necessary.
Exactly.
Because that is really important sometimes with Deeply Dippy Brass Section, which was Molly Duncan from Average White Band scored that, and he did a brilliant job. And we've used some of those other players since, and they that level of skill needs that discipline.
Yeah.
Whereas quite often with guitar players, it's not quite the same way, or drummers or bass players. Sometimes it is, but not always. And it's a different approach to how you put a track together.
I always thought, that's a bit of an old thing, but Glenn Miller was a really good example of somebody who must have had huge technical skill, but understood a simple hook, understood the importance, and also somebody recently said that repetition legitimizes.
Which it does.
Which it does.
To watch the full video, please become a premium member at lotuseaters.com.